Okay, here we go. Awesome. Thank you for being here, Jamie. And did you have any slides that you wanted to share, or are you keeping it informal?
I will keep it informal, but I do have some slides to share. I'll share my screen when we get there.
Okay, perfect. I just enabled that, so you should be able to do that when we're ready. Well, I don't want to wait too long. Hopefully, like I said, we'll have some more folks that join us, but in the essence of time, we will go ahead and get started. First thing, I just wanted to give a couple of updates from Repowering Schools. Um, so first of all, if you're not familiar, Repowering Schools offers something called our conference experience, and sometimes we can link that with a student symposium. We are excited. Our next conference experience with Student Symposium is actually going to be at ACES, the American Solar Energy Society, in Boulder in August. That registration is closed, but we're excited to have, I think, 15 students joining us in Boulder, and we'll be doing a full solar student symposium with industry presentations and field trips and poster sessions and all the fun things. So we're really looking forward to that. But for you all, our next conference experience will be at RE which is a very large industry trade show that happens in Las Vegas this year, the beginning of September. Sure is very challenging with student schedules. But if you're interested, you can use this QR code to fill out our application. We will be hosting a poster session at our booth, so you'll have the opportunity to share any research that you're working on. And we also do industry meetups and mentored show floor time. And there is a career fair that is put on by Rise and Grid Alternatives that you'll have access to. So it should be a really fun time. So hopefully you'll be able to join us. And just in case you're not familiar, our conference experiences are a free conference pass and a hotel room. So you have to get there, but otherwise the rest of it is taken care of. So hopefully you will be able to join us. And we haven't opened anything up yet, but just know that we will be excited to bring students to the RISE Leadership Forum, which is October 14th through 16th in Atlanta. They are very excited to grow their college student participation in this event. So if you have any interest, you should let me know. And I'm working with RISE to figure out how that works right now. So also from the Repowering Schools side of things, we host a Renewable Energy Education Awards program jointly with the Kidwin Project, where we recognize excellence in education at the K-12 level as well as the collegiate level. We have Outstanding Educator, Student Excellence, an Industry Champion Award, Special Recognition Awards, and we also recognize schools that are walking the walk and talking the talk with renewable energy demonstration projects on their campus. We did some amazing public voting this year, which we had like over 500 people voting, which is like amazing. And those winners have been selected, but you will find that out publicly at our award ceremony on Zoom on June 12th in the evening. So you can that's the link to actually join the Zoom. So I guess maybe don't do that quite yet, not till, but it'll also be on our website. The link will be on our website shortly. And then I just wanted to remind you all that we do record these sessions, and I know that sometimes this time frame can be challenging with work schedules and summer schedules, and we appreciate you trying to get here as often as you can. And if you can't get here, just know that by being on that mailing list, you will receive this link after the fact, and our YouTube channel stores all of the webinars from years past. So please feel free to look around and enjoy our YouTube channel offerings. And with that, it's time to turn it over to Jamie, kicking off our summer series. We're really excited to have Jamie here. I have personally known Jamie for a very long time, and I'm very proud of how far she has come in this industry, and I'm excited to have her here. We definitely want to use this as an opportunity for you all on the call to ask questions and learn more I know Jamie's got some things she wants to talk about, but the biggest thing that we like to start with is a little bit about where you came from, how you got where you are, and what it is that you do, which I'm sure you're going to cover in spades. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you go ahead and share yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Remy. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. Let me know when y'all can see my PowerPoint here. I can't see y'all, so please let me know if there's any questions that come up while I walk through these slides, but ultimately here to talk a little bit about my experience, answer any questions you have. And if you hear any, sitting a really sweet puppy today who's gonna be crying at the door as I present this today. But so grateful to Remy for putting this group together. I definitely wish I had had something like this as a college student participating in internships to connect with my peers at other companies. So whether you're watching this now or you're tuning in after the fact, watching the recording, I really encourage you to continue using this group throughout your summer internship experience. With that in mind, would love to kick off a little bit about myself. So my name is Jamie Mears. I am a manager of project development with Ørsted. I was recently promoted actually after the last slide that Remy presented. So in my new manager role, I am responsible for managing the project development of early stage wind, solar, and battery storage assets across the onshore US business here at Ørsted. I work remote out of Richmond, Virginia. Shout out to the Virginians on the call, but ultimately I report to our East Development Group, which is based out of Austin, Texas. I've got some slides to share here, starting with a little bit about myself. I've got some photos here up front. I was a student at James Madison University between the years of 2016 and 2020. During that time, I discovered my passion for the renewable energy industry. I was very lucky to discover what the energy industry was very early. A lot of my peers stumbled into it later, which is also perfectly fine. But if you're in this room right now and you're on this call, it means that you found it earlier than a lot of other people. And so pat yourself on the back for finding a great industry early. We hope that you stick around. If you get inspired by something else during the summer and pursue that instead, that's even better. But ultimately, this industry has inspired me in a lot of ways. And two of the photos here, starting in the top left corner, was a trip that I had the opportunity to go on in college, a study abroad opportunity to the island of Malta. Took a class with the university there, focused on sustainability and connecting with the natural world. And we worked with an NGO that was focused on bringing residential solar to low poverty homes in that community. And that was really my first time seeing the positive impact that solar energy can have on low income communities. That next photo in the middle was not an official site visit. It was actually a family trip to Ireland. We were driving down the street and I was so excited to see my first ever wind turbine in person at 18, probably I was in that photo, 19, and demanded my parents to pull over so I could take this picture in front of these wind turbines that I was so excited about and hadn't gotten a chance to see for myself. Right below that in the middle is a selfie that I took 2 years later on top of my first wind turbine I was able to climb. This was a study abroad opportunity through JMU in Germany, where we worked in a research lab evaluating how different surface types on wind turbine blades could increase the aerodynamic principles of those blades, experimenting with things like dimples you see on golf balls versus the flat blades that you typically see, things like that. So we were working in a 3D printer and a wind tunnel to evaluate those. And this was a fun side trip that we took to visit the wind turbine farm nearby. Another college project that inspired me was the collegiate wind competition. For those of you who are still undergraduate students, I encourage you to Google this after if you're not familiar with it already. But the collegiate wind competition is a NREL and DOE sponsored challenge for college students, and JMU, among a dozen, 2 dozen others, participate annually. We had the opportunity to present at an industry conference at the top right corner, a year-long findings of what we believe to be a suitable wind farm in northwestern Virginia within 100 miles of our university. And in fact, there was a company many years ago who had tried to develop a wind farm there. So that poster board in the bottom right corner was from that developer years prior who had attempted to develop there. Got a cool photo. And then, of course, something that inspires me above all else is getting the chance to repay the opportunities that I've had through working with students. Remy is super involved, of course, in Repowering Schools and the KidWin program. These are all interconnected, and happy to speak after if you're interested in learning more. But the KidWin program being a nonprofit focused on STEM K through 12 education, renewables, we have these awesome opportunities to work with students to build model wind turbines and test them in these wind tunnels. And so Remy might recognize that photo, but that photo was taken almost 10 years ago now, which makes me feel quite old. Moving along here, I started my role after graduating from JMU in the summer of 2020. As many of you know, this was peak COVID time, and it was very challenging to start a new role in that environment. I'm so grateful that you are all entering the industry at what we would say is a more normal environment compared to what I did. One of my first projects that I worked on was a solar project in Virginia, where we had to go through permitting hearings just like any other time. So that top left photo shows the presentation that I did in southwestern Virginia with masks on, meeting with the local fire department and other local constituents. As a renewable energy developer, whether it's wind, solar, or storage, a lot of the work that I do in that early planning period is some room in his backyard. There you go. We're back online. In the top middle photo here, you see a community garden that Ørsted sponsored. These are things that, to me, I find to be really inspiring, and I hope to inspire you guys with these as well. The bottom two photos are other community events that, through our focus on bringing Ørsted to the forefront of these communities, we're oftentimes sponsoring local events. That bottom right photo is me working a booth, handing out swag and informing the community about projects that we were developing in Mississippi. You can see that same tablecloth has just traveled far and wide. And then that beautiful pumpkin that you see was a Halloween festival just last year, where I was a guest judge in the pumpkin decorating contest. And that hamburger was my personal favorite. So it got a feature in the PowerPoint today as well. So that is an overview about me. I'm excited to talk to you guys a little bit, not just about me and how I got to this role at Ørsted through my experience at JMU and in the 5 years that I've worked at Ørsted, some of these awesome programs I've been a part of, but also want to talk to you a little bit about Ørsted and the work that we do. I recognize that some of you are working at Ørsted this summer. If so, kudos to you, and you'll see a lot of this again when you start your roles next week. But for those of you who are not familiar with Ørsted, I'm happy to share this with you guys today. So many of you are probably already familiar with Ørsted as a leader in the offshore wind business. That is still our bread and butter. It's how we entered the industry. Coming from an oil and gas background, this company started as Danish oil and natural gas Dong Energy, and there was a very good reason why. After deciding to enter English-speaking markets, they chose to change the name from Dong Energy to something like Ørsted. And so that offshore wind business was the first pivotal technology that we took on after letting go of a lot of our oil and gas assets. Since then, over the last decade, we've really focused on our onshore presence as well, not just in the US, but also worldwide. Like I said, these are wind, solar, battery storage. We also have experimented with hydrogen and other green fuels. Happy to talk about this more offline if you're interested. It's certainly not my area of expertise, but I find it inspiring to see Ørsted taking on challenges beyond our core business model and in hopes to create a more sustainable future. Here's a little bit about our pipeline. So as you can see, we are doing really well in the US right now with 8 gigawatts of projects, all offshore, onshore, solar, and storage combined. But I think people don't always know what we do beyond that footprint in the US. So our home community as Ørsted is the North Sea area in Scandinavian countries. And so you're going to see a lot of offshore wind in that area. If you happen to be on a boat crossing the North Sea, chances are you're going to pass several Ørsted wind farms in that area. We also expanded our business to the Asia Pacific region in the last few years. We recently were awarded a lease area for an offshore wind farm off the northern coast of Australia. It's not something that I'm directly a part of, but if they flew me out there, I'd be happy to do so. But focus on the US, since a lot of us here today are particularly focused on this market, what I want to emphasize here is how critical it is for development companies to have a large pipeline to support future growth, not just focused on having a lot of projects up front, but then how do you continue to develop those projects thoughtfully with the intent of being long-term operators of those projects. And so a lot of the projects you see here in blue are in operations. Now, Ørsted has only been operating in the US onshore market for about 5 years, which is when I started. Prior to that, there were a couple smaller development shops that were later acquired by Ørsted. So what you're seeing here is a lot of projects that were developed by the same staff under a different company name at that time. Lincoln Energy Services, if you're familiar with any of these names, those were the 2 companies that were acquired by Ørsted back in the 2019 area. Otherwise, I really want to share here how important it is that we're also diversifying our portfolio. So you see a lot of focus here in the Midwest. Our team is doing a lot of work right now to expand further both east and west, and happy to talk more about that too. Here's just another stat about our platform. I really want to focus on that right-hand box. 3 pillars of strategic sustainability for us: decarbonization, biodiversity, and community impact. My first slides, I talked a lot about community impact, but I haven't talked as much about biodiversity. Ørsted, among other companies, have put a high focus on this because a lot of times we find that the renewables industry is not going to be the catch-all 100% sustainable energy form. We do try our best in the solar and wind industries when it comes to recycling components at end of lifetime, things like that, but we can do more. And Ørsted's trying our best to do so. And one way to do that is a commitment that we made to ensure that all of our sites are going to be net positive in the biodiversity category from 2030 on. That means any projects that we're developing now that will be installed and operational by the year 2030 or later, we are doing the work up front today to ensure that we are using native grasses, paying attention to the local species, et cetera, to ensure that we are ultimately going to have a net positive biodiversity impact throughout the lifetime of that project. Big reason why I value Ørsted and what we stand for is because of those priorities that have been made. A lot of you will recognize this group of companies. I think this is always a fun slide to share because you don't always think about when you're ordering from Amazon or filling up your gas tank at ExxonMobil where their energy is coming from. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with green energy targets that some of these companies have published. It's a part of their marketing. We're so glad that the industry has taken that turn. In exchange, it creates an opportunity for companies like Ørsted to partner with these companies that are interested in advertising, say, 100% clean energy fueled, or maybe they want to be carbon neutral by 2030. There's so many ways to define that, but a lot of the goal is the same there, which is purchasing power from companies like Ørsted and our peers in the industry in order to ensure that there is an offset of their systems, even if it's not directly in the same geographic region. We can do so across the country through green credits and virtual power purchase agreements. Now I would like to just take 2 minutes to dive into my day-to-day. Now, for the folks on this call, you may be completing an internship this summer about project development. If so, then this is very close to the work that you're doing. If you're not necessarily focused on project development, I still think that this is important because that early stage defines how projects grow in future years of development, construction, and operations, how we finance the projects, how we be good stewards in doing so. And I am so excited that I get to share this with you guys because the upfront days are critical. So what does my day-to-day look like? It's changed a lot in the last 5 years as the industry grows and refines these processes. But one thing has always stayed the same, which is wanting to site projects and in that early, we call it greenfielding phase, where we're looking for new land to develop these sites on. We want to do so thoughtfully and with the intention of finding sites that will pay off in the long term. And not every site's going to do that. And so we focus on those optimally sited projects. Also, we're working during this early development phase on your permitting, your local relationships, securing those commercial offtake contracts with those companies, for example, that I listed on the previous slide. And ultimately, my job during that step one is to put everything together, tie a big red bow on top, and deliver that to a construction team that takes it from there. Really, that's the handoff point for me. Sometimes a developer will stay on more or less depending on how valuable those local relationships are or how easily they're passed off. But ultimately, day one, project inception through pass off to a construction team is where I focus my time. Then that construction team, as you can imagine, will take those plans, secure your procurement contracts with maybe it's a panel provider or wind turbine manufacturer to ensure that those are held to the highest standards. And construction of these sites can take roughly 1 to 2 years, depending on where you are. Whereas that earlier development term could take you 5 to 10 years, depending on the type of project you're working on. And so that construction period is a lot shorter, but immensely complicated and valuable, still the same. Step 3, we are now exiting the construction phase and entering the operational phase. This is going to be the longest term of the project lifetime, with somewhere from 20 to 40 years of an operational term, depending on the technology and where you are. And really in this period, it is low maintenance and just doing our best to keep things as safe and professional as possible. Safety, of course, is number one priority. And then beyond that, wanting to be good community partners. Lastly, at the end, we're facilitating the business side to ensure that power is properly being sold to whoever it needs to go to, and also making sure that we have a plan for decommissioning at the end, which is just off the slide here. I've talked a lot about these already, but haven't talked as much about this middle column, which is the local governments. This is in the photo a classic example of small town rural America town hall, where you've got locally elected or nominated individuals who are representing county members in an attempt to make good decisions for the local communities. And a lot of times we're needing some kind of permit or decision from these governing bodies that are happening not just at the state or federal level, but at the local level as well. I have reached the end of my deck, but before I open for questions, I'd love to share some photos with you guys because I always think these are fun. Here we've got a wind farm in Texas that at the time these photos were taken were under construction, but it is now an operational project. And what I think is so amazing is seeing the scale of these wind turbines. If you have not had the opportunity to see one, I encourage you to find a time to do so, because it is immensely intimidating and rewarding to see these in a final product. And if you check out that bottom left area of that left photo, you see a ladder coming out of the inside of that blade. For scale, that's a 20-30 foot ladder. And imagine how large that blade has to be to hold that ladder. It's pretty amazing to me. And of course, the cranes out there are large as well. We've also got construction going on at our solar project. So this is another Texas site, old 300 solar. After these photos were taken, we actually have started adding a battery storage facility here as well. So this is one we're really excited about. But I think this photo on the left is cool because you can see all of the rods and steel piles have been driven ahead of time. You've got your inverter blocks in place, and you're starting to see the panels come in. And so slowly, it's like a wave, you see those panels get installed. And on the right, you've got your classic substation construction. You can see the breakers going in there, and it shows how complicated these sites can really be, and also how massive compared to those bulldozers this equipment really is. Some fun operational photos. I just think these are cool because in Texas we get dust storms, and it's not something you always think about. And the visibility is not the most important thing day to day at a wind farm that's operational and not having issues. But as soon as you have a problem and you need to get a technician out there, visibility becomes a huge concern. And so how do we prepare our technicians to safely and appropriately repair these turbines is something that we deal with every day. Operations at a solar project is going to be your lowest of low maintenance for sites. Wind is a little bit more complicated with the moving parts, but for solar, you oftentimes will have a tracker system where that solar panel is moving throughout the day following the sun on a rod. But that's the only moving component. Otherwise, you're more concerned about making sure that these panels are operating properly. And on that right-hand side, you're actually seeing the front casing of a battery storage system, which has changed the industry a lot. But our new standard is base case assumption 99% of our solar projects will be installed with a battery storage system. And 5-10 years ago, that was kind of a crazy thought. So it's been fun to explore that side of the business as well. For me personally, as I mentioned before, the sustainability aspect has always really inspired me about this industry. It keeps me in my seat and helps me continue to do the job. One way that I was inspired recently was a site visit that we took to Alabama, where we have a Muscle Shoals solar project in operations. And I just adore these photos because these sheep not only are really cute, but they work their butts off out there, and they are responsible for the vegetation management at this. This was a pilot at the time that these photos were taken. And if you look at the bottom left photo there, you can see the Great Pyrenees guard dog peeking out of the grass. For this project, roughly 3,000 acres in size for the solar project itself, we had, starting with 400 sheep and 10 cattle dogs. And over the course of the 1-year pilot, I learned that sheep reproduce quite quickly. We ended up with 500 sheep and 15 cattle dogs because the cattle dogs had a litter of puppies. And the two photos on the left and the right were taken at the beginning of the pilot, only a couple weeks in. And that photo in the middle was taken about 6 months into the pilot. And so you can see behind the sheep there the difference in the grass. It also was a different time of year, so the grass was dead. But ultimately, seeing the way that they manage the grass there and are very effective in doing so proves that it was a success. That brings me to the end of my PowerPoint. I threw my email on here. Feel free to take a screenshot of this and save it for later. I am available to you guys at any time for questions after this, and really want to continue to be a resource for all of you. So thanks for listening.
Well, that was amazing, Jamie. Thank you so much for taking us through your story and your day to day. I thought that was really, really informative. I have questions, but I want to open it up to the students and see if you all have any questions first. Well, if you don't have any questions, I'm going to force you guys to talk because I want to know who everybody is and where you are coming from. But we'll let you ask your question first. Sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry. So I just had a quick question. This is something that I've been dealing with when I was working on my projects, research projects. It's just how do you balance out technical site setting criteria with respect to all the social acceptance and in site selection. And I feel like that's one place I really get stuck in a lot. So I just was wondering how it is worked out in the industry.
It's a great question. And I think that is a big reason why developers have jobs. If it was easy to develop projects, then the construction guys would just go out there, find a site, and then start building. And the whole reason why there's an industry for us is because of how complicated the social dynamics can be. The biggest advice that I've gotten is, I personally am not from rural America. A lot of developers are not. And so you have to somehow put yourself in the shoes of these folks without ever have lived their life, but can understand where they're coming from in wanting to protect the land that's been in their family for decades, or protect the community that they're leading if they're in some form of a leadership position. And fortunately, the technical side, we at least at Ørsted have great experts in house that can guide us through some of those concerns. But I see with battery storage right now, for example, at this point, a lot of communities have gotten not fully comfortable, but at least understand what wind and solar are. I think battery storage right now is where we're seeing a lot of misinformation and safety concerns, which is understandable given what we see in the news oftentimes. And my balancing act is focused on how to do so in a responsible manner and being willing to walk away when a project's not going to work. Ørsted's very fortunate that we have a large pipeline that we're refining all the time, and so we can be strategic in where we pursue opportunities. If we see an opportunity to educate, we're going to take that opportunity. But if it's going to do more harm than good, then we're also willing to walk away. And it's hard to find those lines, but you'll find out more this summer.
Great question.
I think I see another.
Sorry, before you move to the next question, can you just introduce yourself? Because I don't know who people are. So before, yes, thank you.
Yeah. I'm Shreya. I'm a student at Cornell University. I'm also going to be interning at Ørsted this summer. And I'm in the project development team that Jamie mentioned.
Wonderful. That makes sense now. Thank you. It's so nice to meet you. And sorry, I'm not sure if I'm saying your name correctly, but you are next.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Vamika. I am also actually part of the project or interning at the project development team at Ørsted, just the West regional team. I'm currently a master's and MBA student at the University of Michigan. Jamie, I was sort of adding to what Shreya was saying. I was wondering, okay, you've done the site selection, you're now you're starting the greenfield process. And I'm wondering how you manage the power dynamic difference, especially, you mentioned dealing with local governments, local community members. There is both an information power dynamic as well as just like ability to pay for lawyers, for example, or just understand what ordinances mean. And I'm wondering how, given that that's so important to Ørsted, I'm wondering how you sort of deal with balancing that or creating a playing field where you can actually have a meaningful conversation on the same plane.
Yeah, this is such a great question because I'm dealing with right now. So I'll give you a real example of a solar project that I'm working on in Arkansas. And the West is going to be very different because you are working with such vast amounts of land. A lot of times it's one landowner owning a lot of land. And when you get into the eastern part of the US, especially in solar development, you might be working with a 50-acre landowner here and a 20-acre landowner here. And that power dynamic shifts very quickly when that 50-acre landowner maybe did not graduate from high school. Maybe they're not even able to read a lease agreement beyond not even being able to afford a lawyer. And so what typically will happen in my experience is, as Ørsted, when we were greenfielding, we will target those large landowners first. Chances are they're a large landowner because they own a lot of property within a certain area that's a certain distance from a transmission line that we've targeted. In that initial contact, because they own a certain amount of acreage, maybe it's a company, some sort of farming LLC, or it's a family that's been farming for generations, they a lot of times do have the money, frankly. It's very rare that you run into someone who owns 3,000 acres and doesn't have the money to support opportunities on that farm. And so that first landowner will be the one that spends the money up front if they hire a lawyer, but also in our lease agreements, we offer attorney fee reimbursements up to a ceiling. And these numbers start to blow my mind after a while, but I've seen $5,000 to $10,000 per lease agreement in attorney fee reimbursements. It's a lot of money to ask these landowners to put forward, which is why Ørsted a lot of times is offering that money at the signing. So you got to front it, and then we'll reimburse you after the lease is signed. And then that lease agreement that was negotiated by kind of the lead landowner, through attorney approvals will then trickle down through the smaller landowners. So just a very specific example of that power dynamic. Then you've got local decision makers who may be a neighbor. A lot of times they are not a participating landowner, but they were elected into some community supervisor role and maybe are going to be looking at the site. They are not seeing the checks coming in the mail that your landowners are seeing. So how do you educate and share the benefit with the broader community? And the biggest way is through property tax payments. That's the community benefit that's coming in beyond the lease payments. And we've been able to partner with communities to help them allocate funds to certain needs. And most commonly, it's emergency services like replacing fire trucks and ambulances, or schools. We have a community in Mississippi who they've already tacked a certain amount of that money that they know is going to come in and started plans for drafting their future high school. And so the high school that's going to this community will be partially funded by the project that's still even in development. Obviously, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get there, but this is a question that I could talk to for another hour, but I hope for now that's a good starting point.
Great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, Raj, you want to ask yours?
Sure, yeah. I'm Raj. I'm a just graduated senior from Rice University. I'm also very involved with the collegiate wind competition team at Rice, so it's been lots of fun. I was very curious to hear more about your the biodiversity positive contract that you were talking about, like especially for offshore wind farms. How would you ensure when you put in the wind farm that you're creating more biodiversity than you're taking away?
Great question. And I've got the perfect person to introduce you to after this call who can answer all your questions and more on biodiversity. But from a development perspective, we partner with a internal group of a biodiversity team that are actually experts in this field. And they are able to provide us with recommendations before we go to outside consultants to say, for this specific project, this is what we would recommend. And I listed some examples for an onshore project, like your native vegetation, protecting local species that might be endangered, things like that. That can be comparable to what you'd see on the offshore side. I know one example that I saw recently was focused on the coral habitat around the base of the turbines, because a lot of times those ecosystems are trying to form communities around the base of these wind turbines, and doing something to enable that and encourage that. It is something that we've explored. I don't know if Remy, you have anything to add, because you've probably done more offshore than I have.
No, I mean, that's exactly right. I haven't heard much on the research side about what kinds of communities come in afterwards and on those artificial reefs. But as an oceanographer, and I worry a little bit, like what happens if some predator comes into our offshore wind farm in Virginia and eats all of the blue crabs in the Chesapeake Bay? Like we wouldn't know but it would be interesting to see any changes in those ecosystems, how they're having a positive benefit to biodiversity and to the ecosystem as a whole. I don't know much about what's going on there, so.
Me neither. And I just thought of one more, because as an onshore developer, I'm not well versed in oceanic ecosystems, but we do talk a lot about birds in the onshore side, and birds are going to be an area of concern for the offshore side as well. And we have found that as for example, the offshore industry has started growing more and more in the US, what we're finding is that there are now pieces of infrastructure out in the ocean that enable us to survey avian species in a way that we've never been able to do before. There, of course, are oil rigs all over the place. I can't say whether or not the oil industry has been active in this, but at least from Ørsted's side, because we're interested in monitoring any endangered or all avian species around our offshore wind turbines, we're partnering with environmental consultants that come and set up at our turbine locations. Thanks, Nate. And they're able to use that as a home base to have cameras or other ways of tracking, and it's helping to improve our understanding of those behaviors. A lot of work needs to be done to then take those behavioral patterns and find a way to run with it.
And if you're not familiar, there is a nonprofit organization called the Renewable Energy and Wildlife Institute, which I'm sure the folks at Ørsted and many other companies work hand in hand with. They do that research and to mitigation as well as baseline studies and all of the things. So,
Love
Oh
it.
yeah, that's a lot of great information. Thank you all. And I would love to learn more, and I bet the product development team on Rice Wind Energy would as well. So yeah, if you have that contact, we'd love to talk to them more about this, because we've done some bird mitigation in our design with painting one of the turbine blades black. We
Yeah.
also have bat deterrent units, but it'd be very interesting to learn more about, especially offshore wind farm, biodiversity improvements and impact mitigation. So,
I put the link in the chat to the Renewable Energy Wildlife Institute too. So I know some people there if you're interested in a contact there as well.
awesome. Yeah, thanks.
I'm dropping my email in the chat. Anyone who would like to follow up with me, feel free to shoot me an email. Raj, if you could remind me, I can use the email that you send me to connect you with the person I have in mind.
Great questions. So I would love to meet the other two folks on our call, and I'm gonna butcher a name, so I'm gonna just let Annie talk for herself.
Hi, I'm VNA. I'm a master's student at Carnegie Mellon University. And I'm going to be working in the data analysis team with Ørsted. So, not necessarily project development, and I don't really have any background in energy, but I'm really excited to get into it and learn as much as possible. I'm more so on the data analysis side background, so trying to merge the two together and this all seems really great, especially because I do come from an environmental engineering background and sustainability. So I'm really excited.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and now I'm kicking myself because I had a slide in here about energy analysis and I took it out and I should have left it in for you.
That's okay.
Don't worry, at VNA that we have a speaker coming up later this summer. It's small wind, but he is very data analytics and data heavy, and it takes a special person to appreciate that. So hopefully you'll be
Okay.
able to make that. His name is Joe Sposey, and he's with RE Innovations, and he does wind turbine testing all over the country. So he's going to be a very interesting person to talk to as well.
Yeah, awesome. Looking forward to it. And I'll probably connect with you later on, Jamie, so don't worry about it.
Awesome.
All good. What I will say is, a lot of times data analysis is not in the forefront of the development conversation, but since you brought it up, I will share that some of the most interesting projects that I've worked on have been related to the energy assessment side of siting and how do we elect sites that are not just good as far as what the ground looks like, but also what the resource looks like. And for solar, it's a little bit more straightforward, but for the wind side, it gets really complicated.
Yeah.
And even more so than that, it's critical for me as a developer to have really good landowner relationships up front because we need properties from day one to install that early equipment, the meteorological towers, et cetera, to start that process over the years and years that it takes me to get permits. We're just letting these machines run behind the scenes and collect data. And so from day one, it's something that developers are thinking about. So shout out to the data folks.
Data
Yeah,
folks.
looking forward to it. Thanks.
And it looks like Kevin had to run, but Kevin is a grad student at UVA here in Virginia, doing research on floating wind turbines, and hopefully we'll see him on another call. But did anybody else have any other questions? I know we're kind of getting to the end of the hour, but we can field a couple more questions. And
I know we covered a lot and super appreciate y'all's time.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, I think you had an amazing story, but would you have, any kind of last bits of advice or any experiences or activities that you took on in college that were particularly useful that you would suggest that students get involved in?
It's a great question. I actually had some photos that didn't quite make it in my earlier slides from research that I did at JMU. And When I first was on my career exploration, I actually first wanted to be a teacher. So first was on an educational track, then pivoted to renewables because I found out how quickly I loved this industry, but transitioned on more of a research basis. So my first view was seeing myself in the R&D labs developing these technologies. And I did try my best in that type of environment. And I'm glad that I put myself in that environment. I learned very quickly that working in repetitive tasks in a lab was not for me. I wanted to be in these communities and I wanted to be talking about these technologies as opposed to being the ones constructing them, which is fine. And I am so grateful that I took the time to actually learn what this equipment is and what it means and how it works, because it's an invaluable asset, not just me as a developer, but me as a citizen in America, where this is a hot topic right now. And a lot of times you'll find yourself in social settings where your neighbor will say, "Oh, you're interested in renewables. I heard that offshore wind kills whales." and there's definitely a way to be a good representative of the industry, not just in these roles that you're taking on this summer, but in your personal lives. And I encourage you all to find every opportunity you can to educate yourself in as many aspects of the business, have as many one-on-one coffee chats you can with everyone, because I find that a lot of times I'm referring back to those conversations more than I'm referring back to my day-to-day when I am trying my best to represent the industry in a positive light outside of that.
Yeah, that's great. You get a good answer for that question. Isn't it offshore killing whales?
It's funny because there's such a political tie to that statement, but ultimately the Ørsted team does have researchers out there doing everything they can to demonstrate why we believe that's not the case. And so there's going to be a report coming out soon that hopefully I can share with you.
And I find that really interesting, Jamie. I never knew that you were on an education track before you got to us. So isn't that funny? And I think I
was very early.
I was like I was on a research track and I finally was like, never mind, education. Yeah. So that's funny.
The one of the things I'm most grateful for is they put me in a kindergarten teaching internship, and that immediately told me that I was not capable of teaching.
I'm sure you were capable. It just does not mean it was, your favorite thing. I agree. Anyway, classrooms are a thing, but awesome. Well, I appreciate all of your time. Does anybody else have any other last things? Maybe if everybody could say one thing they're hoping to get out of your summer internship, right? Because you guys are mostly at Ørsted, but Raj, you're going to be at GE this summer, right? So do you guys have any big hopes and dreams for your summers?
I mean, I just want to make as much, positive impact in driving forward design and renewable energy as I can, because we need this stuff quickly. So I want to help make good wind turbines, that can make a lot of impact quickly. I'll be on the grid team, so I still have yet to learn exactly what that's going to entail in detail. But I'll be working on how to tie in the wind turbines into the grid and optimizing that. So it'll be a lot of fun.
That sounds very interesting.
Kind of off of what Jamie was saying, I want to be able to learn a little bit about every aspect of the industry and be able to have conversations with others that kind of, I guess, encourages them to support renewable energy and other sustainable solutions. So I'm really excited to learn a lot about everything that's going on in the industry.
I'm gonna be echoing pretty much what everyone else said, but also I want to be able to answer some of my questions that I've been having in a little bit of a better way, in a more nuanced way, as I come out of the summer internship. So, yeah, I'm hoping for that. And obviously, meeting everyone and being able to learn more about different industries or different verticals that really help build the renewable energy space in a much more efficient way is what I want to learn more. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we look forward to having you guys on future calls. Every week, the goal is to have these presentations, but have some time at the end to revisit how you're doing this summer, how your internship's going, maybe something exciting that you're learning, something you're super excited about. To think of it more of like a peer share opportunity towards the end of our calls. So we hope you come back and join us, and just giving a pitch for next week, same time, same place. But next Wednesday, we are going to be hearing from Mike Berge, who is the president and CEO of Berge Wind Power, which is a small wind turbine manufacturer. So it's a little bit of a different feel, but he is a very, very interesting gentleman that I've had the pleasure of meeting and working with in the past. And I think you guys will really enjoy hearing his story. So I hope you come back and join us next Wednesday. And at that, unless you guys have any other questions for Jamie, I will release you and say thank you for being here, and I hope we'll get to see you next week.
Yep, and it sounds like I'll be speaking with all of you at some point in the future. So I look forward to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
See ya.